All right, so as I mentioned, Matthias is out today. He and Chinyu, it looks like they updated what they are working on for this week. So Lexi and Nicola, you are up with blob controller and blame controller work.
Yeah, thanks Nicola for adding the section into the doc. So for blame controller, me and Nicola, we looked into the flame graphs and found that the issue is the biggest offender. So I'm preparing the merge request to speed up. The current result is on my local environment, it's dropping from 35 seconds to 13 seconds, like more than twice. But I'm trying to rearrange the code to put it into to pull it into presenter from views. It's a bit tricky, to be honest, but I hope to send a merge request to review today. But it's only about view part of one controller. So that's it.
Yeah, and we will continue looking at the backend part as well. We looked at the flame graph as for backend, and we will see. There are some places where we could optimize, but we will see.
Okay, that was blame controller. Is there any work underway on blob controller, or is that still to be done later?
No,
I started looking at it, like I did measure some stuff, but we concentrated the most on blame controller first.
Okay.
It's worth to mention that blame controller and blame API like share the same backend. So flame graph on that backend part will probably lead to improvement on both endpoints, blame controller and the API.
So blob and blame controller both share the same API?
No, blame controller and blame API.
Oh.
Technically, we have three controllers, like,
yeah.
I mean, even four, like blob control, blob API, blame control, blame API. So I was working on blame controller view part, which is not present on API, but the slow, which is the slowest amongst four.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. And then next.
CI minutes, yes. Actually, today I rebased my merge request to remove feature flags. So my plan is to look into the metrics dashboards Camille prepared for us and check if everything is okay. I didn't receive any like incidents. Nobody mentioned me. So if everything is okay in dashboards, we could, I guess, merge the feature flags removal if Camille is not against it.
Yes, I didn't saw like anything being wrong with what we did. So I guess like we just like merge your merge request that removes the legacy code path at this point.
And again, I didn't do anything on performance instrumentation since my latest comment a couple of days ago, so it's still on hold. No.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I'm going to comment Friday or over the weekend. But if we should talk about this in a separate meeting, certainly open to do so. Or if you have time at the end of this, we can talk some more, or just do asynchronously as well. But yeah, I think perhaps synchronously would be good to try and move forward more quickly.
I'm writing a reply to it now with my thoughts on where we should go with it.
Cool.
And we can talk on that or synchronously as much as you want.
Then we have CI atomic processing, like Camille just commented. So enable likely end of the week. All right. Anything else to talk about?
Yeah, so like we enabled that once again, like today morning, but like we didn't see any problems that we saw the last time. So hopefully this is like the last iteration before enabling that. to be on by default. But so far it seems to be so.
Seems to be what?
So far it seems to be the last iteration
Okay.
of like trying rise and repeat. Like probably we did it like 4 times already, rise and repeat.
Gotcha. All right. Nicola.
Well, nothing to add here, like this timings and measurement down to service layer. I don't know who put it there. It's merged.
That was me.
This is merged, but I will check if the issue is closed. But I think that we closed it last time. The only thing left here is that I'm still waiting to be injected in our Elasticsearch. But I expected that they promised that it will be beginning of June. It was supposed to be over in May, but yeah, they postponed it, like observation team or someone from there.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, adding documentation is almost done. I had problems to get info from maintainer, but now it's reviewed, so I just need to apply some suggestions, and I expect this to be merged.
Okay.
And regarding those transactions, there are 2 issues. One is like adding database total number of database calls and like read calls and cached database calls. This is almost done. Maintainer finished review, but he was not familiar with the code, so I asked Camille to do the final review when he has time. And this another one about making those GitLab transaction metrics is still in progress. Like the first iteration of review is done, but it will need some more modifications.
Okay. Josh, what do we need to do on the blog post?
Yeah, so I think we have to create a blog post issue now for the marketing team, but the corporate marketing seems like they approved it from what I saw. And so now we have to create the follow-up issue for the, I don't know, just like the social marketing team, blog marketing team or whatnot.
Okay.
And then we can work with them and they can start doing some reviews. So I think that's the next step there.
Okay. Do you want to pick that up or you want me to do it? I can pick it up.
That's fine. No, I can do it. It's pretty easy.
Okay. And Camille, focusing on feature flags.
Yes, I'm kind of like got one of the first merge requests merged. I'm now like working on the future ones. It's actually occupying a lot of my attention right now.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like become a side story that become from the other angle seems to be quite important because there is like the need to have the feature flag training, but there is also like a lot of discussion about the feature flags and integrating and dogfooding that feature. So I'm kind of like squeezing myself to finish like this initial iteration of the YAML definition to then hand off that to other people.
And what are you trying to solve in the feature flag side of things?
So Josh, like on last Friday, I managed to finally create a database of all feature flags within GitLab for managing GitLab application. And it turned out that there is 493 unique names of feature flags. So what I'm trying to solve is like making these accounted, documented, and actively being worked on being removed from the code base. This is my primary goal. And sub goals, but these are not my goals, are dogfooding our GitLab feature flags with that model, making it easier to like PMs, SRE, or whatever else to discover exactly what feature flags are enabled where, by whom, for what reason, what is the issue, what is the current state, default state, and things like that. So it's kind of my self-inflicted goal that I'm trying to solve.
Cool.
There's
It's a lot of feature flags.
Yeah, there's this training issue on feature flag usage, and it spawned a bunch of discussions, like different ways feature flags are being used, different understandings of what a feature flag is and how we should use it, naming, all kinds of stuff. And that's when Camille jumped into the conversation and started offering solutions with his MRs. So I added all the links down here if anybody wants to follow along.
Cool.
All right, so I ran through the board to see what was assigned. Did I miss anything? Is there anything anybody's actively working on they want to talk about real quick before we jump over to the unassigned work for this milestone? All right, take that as a no. So we've got quite a bit of unassigned work, and let's talk about if it makes sense still to keep these in the milestone. We're halfway through the milestone right now, so we still have time. The telemetry work, that's Chinyu and Matthias. They are not here, and a lot of these I haven't read yet. So let's take a look. Camille, you created this one. Does this one still make sense for this milestone?
I have no idea because some aspects of that Matthias started working on.
Okay.
But to be fair, I'm kind of considering this unlikely to be done in this milestone. So I think it was kind of like assigned proactively, but nothing really except Matthias' investigation and POC is not happening here. If you look at this, if you scroll to the bottom, there is like some proof of concept from Matthias that he did.
Oh, right. No, that was a while ago. Okay. We'll keep an eye on it, but it looks like it's likely to move on to the next milestone. There's another one from you, Camille.
We are not really doing anything about that one. I'm not aware of that. That kind of spun up as part of the action cable web and all these related discussions. There are some discussions about action cable and measuring implications of bundling or not bundling, but I'm not aware of like us doing anything about that. There is like this. I mean, this issue is probably like part of the bigger story that like we could take a look at the efficiency of our forking model. That should give us pretty big memory improvements on the small instances, because right now it seems that our forking model is not really it's quite efficient, but it's not the best efficient how it could be. And from looking at that issue and looking at action cable issue, it turns out that we could achieve much higher efficiency and effectively have each fork to consume something like 50 maybe or 100 megabytes instead of like 200 or 300 that is happening today. So if we at some point start focus on like trying to run GitLab on 2 gigs installation or something like that of that sort, that would be like the major requirement to look at the forking, preloading, and memory page reuse.
Okay. We'll leave this again. Keep an eye on it for the end of the milestone. And I think this one was already covered with previous conversations. I brought this one in, but again, I don't think anybody's working on it.
Nicola, I think that this you are working as part of the transaction metrics, right? On that one.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
It's like like we are only adding like the metrics to give us some idea, but so probably we solved the detect part of it.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of this issue at all, but yeah, it's included in those metrics.
And you've been assigned now, Nicola.
Yay.
You're welcome. I don't know that this one's being worked on at the moment either. I'll follow up with Matthias on that one later. Telemetry is part of the stuff that Chinyu and Matthias are working on. And I don't think this one's being worked on either. All right, we'll keep an eye on all those. There were a couple things that came in this week. One of them was Sid's comment, and Camille just mentioned it about now that Puma is out and we've seen such great memory reduction, can we reduce our requirements on for memory from 4 down to 2? And I don't have that issue handy, or if there was an issue created.
So I think it was more like 8 to 4 or something like that, or is it like 4 to 2?
I'm pretty sure it's 4 to 2. I'll see if I can find it.
It was
Yes.
4 gigabyte to 2 gigabyte, yeah.
There it is. It was just in a Slack conversation.
I mean, it's actually like very interesting question. I don't know. Probably the best way would be to test exactly how GitLab would behave on this 2 gigs version. And if we can like reduce amount of the like configuration, like amount of the workers on the Puma to 1 and things like that, if it would be working properly. Like from my perspective, like 2 gigs could be pretty aggressive, because I would assume that like the lowest the GitLab could run is somewhere like around 2 gigs of memory usage. But it would require fine tuning. But I have no idea exactly how GitLab performance would behave in these 2 gigs. So could we like run downscale like one of our reference architectures, like I don't know, 1K to like 100 or something like that, and see if it's gonna work on 2 gig version?
Yeah. Yeah, that could be done. It's not too hard actually. Yeah, the 1K environment could be good. The 1K environment does actually have quite a few nodes, but the main node is all the main stuff's all on one node, which currently runs on an 8 gig machine. The problem is it's not a problem, but I can run the performance test against it. They'll likely fail because this is a different question of, can GitLab be very performant on 2 gig? No, but it can it run? Can it still be functional? So I don't know how the results would look. I mean, ultimately, this is going to be like the minimum requirement, and if people want to run it like that, then they can, but it might obviously won't be the most optimal setup.
I'm kind of thinking that we are looking at the current state. Can it run or it cannot run?
Okay.
If it can run, like, can we like downscale 1K to like the lower number to make it run? So if it cannot run, it cannot run. Like we can maybe then optimize that further to figure out where it could, in what case it could run.
I'll raise an issue for that, and I'll see if I can do that this week. I don't know if Sid's asked for this to be done quickly.
He is not. He just asked if it's possible. So
I also expect if I start doing this, he might come back and say, "No, I didn't actually want you to do anything." It's just asking your curiosity. But for me to do a test against that 2 gig 1K is not actually that bad. It's literally one code change. So I can do that, and we can kind of guess from there. But yeah, I mean, obviously with the environment, I can get up and running, I can test it, and then I can just manually use it and see how it goes for a little bit. So, but yeah, I guess off the top of my head, I'd be interested to see if you can do it, because with Puma, the reduction was more like a third, not half.
Yeah.
So maybe 43, although that's not a nice memory number. So maybe that's why he's asked about 2.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it's a question to ask, and we should have some data. I'm not sure it's. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's super important. You know, I think it's been hard to quantify how much incremental revenue we get from lowering it from 4 to 2, right? But you know, this is also why I've been really concerned about Action Cable being turned on by default, because it would likely consume a good chunk of the savings we had off Puma. So
it does from the testing I've seen, but yeah, it's a different aspect, but yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think we can try the 1K. I think we should just try just a simple omnibus defaults install, right? And just see what happens. Might be easier.
So we already have a 1K reference environment, and we test that daily. It has some tweaks in it in terms of config, but it is effectively a 1K environment. We can the test I could do quite quickly is just to tune that down to 2 gig in terms of memory, and see how it does. It'll do badly, but as long as it actually still maintains itself and actually is still functional and maybe not performant, then I guess that would suggest as long as it stays stable, then the answer would be yes, I guess. But we won't know until I test it, so I'll try and get that done this week.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess to be more clear, I'm not sure what the 1K reference environment is the right one to try.
Oh, okay.
Like if you look at the memory, like it would be easier to just utilize our default Omnibus installation on a single node, right? So just install Omnibus and just see what it consumes, as opposed to the 1K reference architecture, which might be a bit different. One example is here. I'll post here's the memory requirements page, right, that we've documented. I think we need to update this, but you know, we even say like for 1K users, you have to have 32 gigs of RAM, for example. And so, yeah.
So we do. That's not right.
You have different metrics for this, Grant?
I think so, yeah. I'll need to double check, but our 1K environment is definitely not running on 32 gig. It's running on 8. So I just looked at the CPU piece of this page, not the memory piece. I didn't actually realize. I think I misread it, and I thought that 8 gig, because it's kind of highlighted, I thought that meant 5,000 users, because the second entry in CPU is also 5,000 users. But I mean, there is other aspects to it, of course. If there's heavy CI usage, then obviously that might increase memory usage. But 32 gig does seem a bit high now.
So with the wording here, does it make sense then to try and, as Josh said, do an omnibus install and then maybe test it with 100 users, or would that be?
It's perfectly fine to try. The 1K environment that we have is running on omnibus.
Okay.
So it could just be a case of I'll tune it down, or I can set up a Docker with 2 gig and then test that with various rates and see how it performs.
Okay.
But as long as it's functional, then I think that we'll certainly want to update this page and say the top one there for 2 gig RAM with 2 gigs of swap, I suppose. Say literally the same text that you can do it, but it will be slow. And then I'll look at the rest and see what the rest should be, because yeah, 32 seems a bit high.
I'll open up an issue just to update that page. I think it's quite out of date.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I ran it on 4 gigs with 0 swap, and it runs fine for at least some portion of users.
Yeah, so I think it's fine. That's the one little interesting rub, is that we can't do swap on Google Cloud instances, or you can, but you need to go through a lot to make it work. So I'll be testing without swap, but we'll see how it goes.
Okay, and I'll create an issue to represent the test for 2 gig environment.
Yeah, that
So
makes
we
sense.
can record all the findings
Yep.
there.
If you give a sign out to me, I'll have a look and play a bit with that this week. I'll decide if I use the 1K environment or I just spin up a Docker and test it locally and see how it does. Because we're not really bothered about performance, we're just bothered about memory usage and seeing if it's functional.
Cool. Okay.
Sounds
Get
good.
that later today. And then the other one that came up was Unicorn keeps running at 100% on an upgrade for a customer.
I think that one's solved. I looked at it yesterday. Or the only thing I don't understand is if you move it, if you look at you click on the follow, like it's been moved to Omnibus. You click on that link there. You like clean up some of his sim links or something like that. I don't really understand, but it's running now.
Okay. Okay, so this looks like it's an Omnibus issue. Very cool.
I'm not even sure it's an Omnibus issue. It
will be an Omnibus issue. Yeah, Omnibus probably is keeping it on by mistake. We didn't catch this. I didn't catch this in the reference environments because I have it switched off specifically because it's the same config as before. When Unicorn was default. So
I'm not sure what you mean.
No, I'm just musing that. I'm annoyed that we didn't catch this before it hit because the reference environments have it switched off specifically, Unicorn.
Okay.
So that's why.
Yeah, so does, I mean,
Omnibus as well, does it? Okay, I'll read into it. Interesting issue.
Yeah, my take was it's a single config issue on that person's machine.
Oh, okay. Even better then.
But I could be wrong.
No, I jumped the gun with the headline. I should always remember to read into it more.
Okay. All right. We've gotten through everything on the agenda, unless there's something else somebody wants to talk about, or we can jump back to the North Star metrics. So we talked about either covering that asynchronously or if we have time. So any other topics anybody wants to cover today?
I posted my response about the North Star metrics as a general kind of where I think maybe this should go. Just to summarize where I think it should go, it's to me the task needs to be more about surfacing more information about performance generally of GitLab across its various guises, .com and self-managed, and any install that really that's out there really, as long as the information is approved to be sent back. So I think that's kind of the main thing for me, and that's the thing that I'd be looking for. I started about a year ago, and my task, when I was given the task of let's get performance testing up to scratch, and I think that's actually been quite useful, and it's been really kind of rewarding to see the fruit born out of that. And we're continuing to keep doing that and expand our performance testing. And one of these next things would be site speed, which we're looking to do just like what we've done with K6, that we can then centrally manage and absorb the cost of maintaining, because we're the quality group and that's our job. So that makes sense for us to continue to do that and to expand into site speed and then continue to just iterate and build on that. But at the same time, for site speed, it's easier for developers to run as well. So we should certainly encourage developers to run smoke tests with site speed in their kind of dev cycles. And then the other thing would be data. That's one of the things that we do have a little bit of here and there in our Elastic instance or in a few other places. But if we can get more data that's parsed and reported on cleanly, that like simple reports that say, well, last month on got.com these endpoints were the worst or pages were the worst, and then a separate report or same report it says, and on self-managed instances from the environments out there that are sending bad data, these were the worst things. And we'd also be able to access the specs of their environments and what browsers they're using, maybe that kind of thing, because then that would really be helpful for not just us but everyone across the company to see oh, okay, milestones is bad, which is actually is the case. Milestones is bad. We know this. We just haven't got the coverage for it yet. So that would be useful for us, I think. And I think that's maybe where this should go. But that was just my take from reading it over again and seeing what it is. I don't see Capybara really being too helpful at the moment because it's doing a lot, and even just measuring the time to complete a test will include other things such as setup and various other stuff, and it'd be running against various environments that can be doing other things as well. But being able to get the information about customer journeys from actual real life instances, I think is quite powerful. So I think that Snowplow actually sounds quite useful over Capybara. So that's what I've kind of posted there. And as I say, I'm happy to discuss that more and try and figure out what we need to do moving forward.
Yeah, so I think to try and restate what I'm hoping to achieve here, and I would all value your opinions, but basically, I'm not sure frankly, the product management team and some of the engineering managers have done an amazing job of prioritizing performance problems in the past, and really having performance be top of mind.
Yep.
And so there's been, the quality team's been great at opening, hotspots and slow Rails controllers and things like that, and those will be getting action, largely probably because of the P's and the S and P labels and things like that. But I would like to try to get performance to be more top of mind for the teams and actually treat it like a feature which they work on and care about and feed and track the usage of. And the reason is that hopefully if we do that, then the teams will address these problems more quickly and care about performance if it's right in front of their face for something that's easily consumable. That's what I'm trying to solve, which is the ongoing triage of performance and making sure that PMs and EMs are making conscious decisions. They're aware of the performance, like the overall performance of their product, of their area, and that they are making conscious decisions of either working on it or not working on it. And right now, I think it's not always easy to understand what the performance actually is of something. A, I'm not sure many people are aware of the site speed test that we have today on like page loads, and B, I think also page loads is not always easy to consume because you might get like, oh, this page loads in 3 seconds or 4 seconds, and it's like, that's not so bad. But when you actually try to like stitch together what that means for trying to complete something, like for example, opening an MR, opening up the expanding the pipeline mini graph and clicking on a job, that takes 15 seconds to complete, and that's I think more concerning than, oh, the MR takes 4 seconds to load, so that's fine, and then your kind of job is done. But no, if you actually wanted to see why your MR failed, you're going to take 15 seconds of clicking through, and that's actually as fast as you possibly can go because it's clicking as soon as the next, as soon as the page actually responds. So that's why I think the journeys or the North Star metrics is important, because I think not only do we need to show it, but we need to show it in a way of like, PMs and EMs. You said that these certain activities are really important to your group. This is how long it takes to actually complete those activities, and this is the performance of these activities, right? So the analog would be oftentimes e-commerce sites, right? They have page load performance, but they also track how long it takes to add something to your cart, click on checkout, and actually purchase it, right? Which is a lot different than the individual page load performance of each individual. It's part of the journey. So that's what I'm trying to solve, which is hopefully to get the rest of the company more proactively addressing, really just more intentionally going about performance prioritization. I think right now it's not really something people really think about too much, unless they get a performance issue opened by quality with like a P label attached.
That's what we've been doing. No, I completely agree. It's something that I've been trying to do as well, but in my own way, I suppose. I've not like, this has been a kind of a secondary effort with the performance testing and the performance issues. I found through my experience, and not just for GitLab and the previous roles as well, that certainly it's just getting information out there and getting it in front of the right people to make them kind of come along with the journey with us, and make them realize, as you say, performance is a feature. I've argued this in the past as well. I see performance as equal to functionality, and if your area isn't performing well, then it shouldn't be released. But you do need to bring in along hearts and minds with it. So with the performance issues, just that alone, we're just surfacing that data. Let's say, hey, look, we've tested this area and it's bad. Blame. Didn't realize blame was that bad. That was a blind spot for us as well. Until a competitor pointed out. So then we immediately added in there. We test every day. We got issues raised, and it's being put in front of the right people. And hopefully they'll keep that in mind moving forward, and keep, if there's going to be any more changes to blame, then performance hopefully will be part of their mind. But I'm certainly very much up for increasing that awareness and that initiative. But yeah, I think it's just information. It's just the data. It's getting the good data in front of the right people and say, look, here's the data. This page is performing, or this scenario is performing badly. So I think site speed pipeline selling will be a big part of that. Just like what we do with K6, and we're starting to see some good kind of results there. And then yeah, having that telemetry data, so a PM could just click into one of our monitoring platforms and go to their area and say, hey, look, this is the actual live stats of this page for the last month against .com or a self-managed instance. I think that's the kind of stuff we need to do.
And I think as far as the prioritization goes, the product team now is working towards having a page that is reviewed every month, which looks at how much usage your features are getting, and that's going to start being utilized to control how much we invest in that area. If your features aren't being utilized, we might not invest next year. You might not get many people as far as headcount goes because you're not seeing a lot of usage. And so we're tracking certain activities, so AMO, which is active monthly unique users. And I would love to have the performance of the AMO right next to, like, all these actions which we say are really key for driving your usage, what you're using to monitor, how much you're using it, right there on that page. That way, when if it's slow and you make performance changes, in theory, you can see right next to it the impact on how many people are actually using said feature. And that way, hopefully, you can get a good feedback cycle of, we thought performance was a reason people weren't using it. We fixed it. Did it actually move the needle on usage or not? And if it did, start getting some good, some good use cases and proof points. I think that'll really help to drive performance forward.
It would. Yep. Massively.
If people make changes, they don't see any change. They don't see any changes in the active user counts. Then, something else is going on. And so having that telemetry, I think, is really important, and having it part of the overall story of not just features, but also the performance of your experience you're providing. I think we'll hope that's what I'm trying to achieve here. Because I think there's some questions as far as why. So Camille, Alexi, does that make sense? Is that?
I think that we have the same goal, which is long-term performance improvement of GitLab. We just slightly have different way to reach this goal, because for example, I opened the scaling review proposal some time ago, and I found the scaling engineers and memory team engineers to help out with scaling review. But one problem that I find it challenging with this scaling review is to actually be useful to the people. So people would ask us to feedback on how to improve the performance. And I think that from my perspective, we have not enough experience with fixing the performance aspects and memorial aspects of GitLab to actually be useful. That's my challenge. And we are still in the phase of learning a lot of these aspects, one by one issue, solving that like Alexi recently with Nicola, they were investigating this blame controller. So they learned flame graph and a lot of awesome techniques. We learned usage of the dashboards to see like the patterns. We learned what else metrics we may add. So, I mean, my question right now is like, we have another team reach to us to ask for the help on the performance aspect. How quickly we can help them on doing that? How quickly we can answer on like their needs? How good could be our guidance on doing that? My personal like thinking and it's like that. It's so. We have like a lot of different topics started. We learned a lot. But like it's still like very targeted on like very specific areas, and I still think that like we don't have very good overview of the whole application, how it works. I'm trying like to figure out a way for us to extend this knowledge to basically by trying to work on these items, kind of build these guidelines while we discover them. Kind of something that like I started doing recently with the feature flags. If I would not start working on that because of the training, I would never like figure out ahead of the time what these guidelines should be, because I would be so detached from the problem to be like I would be solving completely different problem. The problem with the performance is like that you can solve that on so many dimensions and everyone has different perspective what is important. I think like a lot of is being implied by the team name, which is memory. I think we should be looking at our problems from the memory perspective. If you want to look at the problems from different perspective, we should change the description of the team, the name of the team to better indicate what other problem we are solving. Right now, like for example, the seed question about 2 gigs, it's actually ideal problem to us to solve because it's very like well defined and it's actually solving what is in the main part of the core responsibilities of the team. So at least my perspective is like if we have different perspective about what team should be doing, we should change the team name, we should change the team description to better reflect that. But if we are a memory team, I think our primary focus should be identifying and fixing the memory aspects in whatever way it is possible by us. It makes us actually specialists in this area, so we could actually help others. And GitLab is so big that we're not gonna solve every aspect like with our group. So at least from my perspective, it's really hard to write a guidelines on problems that I did not touch, because these guidelines are kind of disconnected and they not represent like the real problem being solved. And second like my thought is like no one really likes architects because they are disconnected from the real problems, and I don't want to be this kind of person either. So if you know what I mean. But yeah, I think we agree in the direction. I mean, we agree in the idea. We just have slightly different perspective about steps and iteration to get there.
Yeah, so I will check in. I will set up a meeting with Sid, or maybe write up an issue with Sid. I asked him directly last time that I can find the Slack link if it hasn't been deleted yet. That we're thinking of working on some performance challenges, not specifically memory. Are you okay with this given the name of the team is the memory group? And he said yes, and that the largely reason why it's called the memory team is because we didn't want to call it the performance team, because we wanted to make sure that everyone felt like performance was their own job, and that's not something which only we're responsible for. But I will get a crisper answer there. The reason why I think it's important to focus on more than just memory is that I think we're losing more business on performance the responsiveness of GitLab than we are on the memory consumption of GitLab. So I think of the more urgent problems for us to solve, it is performance more so than getting it from 4 gigs to 2 gigs. If I look at why people are frustrated with GitLab and the feedback we're getting from our NPS surveys and and things like that, seems to be more around slowness rather than hey, I wish you guys would consume less than 4 gigs of memory.
I added the Slack link to the doc there, Josh.
No, thanks, Craig.
It's under follow-up items.
It is actually quite interesting. Maybe like we could discuss that like another time. But like my thought about that is like these items are deeply interconnected, and if we gonna be great in memory optimization, it's gonna greatly affect the performance of the GitLab as well. Because it's just one of the dimensions. Like we have also database team, and maybe the role of the database team is like to find the ways to remove N+1 problems actively from the code base. And we are memory team, and maybe if we look at the perspective from the memory, we want to also remove N+1s, which reduces memory usage, but also slows down the endpoints. So I think these problems are very deeply interconnected. So I'm kind of thinking that we can achieve a lot by focusing purely on the memory aspect, because it's gonna require from us to redesigning some of the algorithms, which gonna bring much bigger improvement as well. But I think from the other angle, it gives you maybe slightly better focus about the topics that you are looking for. But I guess it kind of boils to the main question. Do we care about looking at the aspects of the GitLab that are memory underperforming? Or do we care about looking at the aspects of the GitLab that are slow on the side speed? Because it's different dimension. The aspects that you're gonna be solving gonna be very similar, but it's different. Your goal is different. Just the outcome might be very similar.
Yeah, I think the prioritization might be different along the way too, of which problems you look at. Sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut someone off.
Yeah, I wanted to say on a side note, why don't we just, for example, I understand the user journey and the beauty of it as a long-standing metric and something that we could demonstrate to our customers and so on. But if the performance and latency, not latency, but this responsiveness of the page is our main focus, why don't we just assign these top offenders to teams? Because we already have the list from Grant. Why do we need to build a tool which would take a lot of time from us and effort? Why don't we start with just assigning slow endpoints? Because I mean, technically, I believe that slow journey is usually the sum of slow pages. So there is nothing in between. So not much in between. So we could just internally at least treat it as a sum of small pages, a slow journey. So maybe we should start with this without building this tool. I mean, at least what Camille said, that we should learn to identify and fix this issue and write guidelines and spread the knowledge. So maybe we as a memory team should fix particular offenders first instead of building this tool. That's, I think, my concern about this story.
Because
concentrating on building this tool and presenting these metrics, we are kind of wasting our time not fixing particular offenders. That's the concern. Sorry.
Yeah, a few quick bits on that. Certainly, if we do get telemetry data about user journeys through, that's useful data. But certainly, I wouldn't expect a bug to be raised, for example, to say that the journey to create a merge request is slow. I would expect bugs about specific points of that journey. The technical parts of that journey that is the problem parts. Like, for example, there was an issue a few weeks ago where someone reported, a user reported that a large folder with many files, if you look at it in the repository on the web UI, is atrocious. It doesn't perform well at all and actually crashes the browser. And it was true, it actually did. But it wasn't, that's not the bug I raised. In the end, the bug I raised is that the specific controller that was causing the problem, in part, was the issue raised. And that I think will have to continue, because obviously we need to translate this is slow to this specific thing is causing this to be slow. And I think that's the case. We're not going to be building, what I was going to suggest there is not specifically a tool. I think getting more telemetry data out of environments and getting that presented in a nice way, I think is a very powerful thing, and I think that should continue regardless. The site speed test, we actually already have kind of like stuff in place to do site speed tests. We just need to expand it and actually get to reporting in a nice way, and then we'll have it there. So I'm certainly not keen to build out a new tool that would be costly to do and then costly to maintain. Certainly for quality, we're looking just to expand what we already have.
Yeah, I think a couple of comments there. One is I think it is important to try and track it from the end user's browser standpoint rather than the Rails controller, because I think one thing that's been apparent with the look at the front end side is that the back end Rails controllers might not be overall that slow, but the page performance could still be quite painful. And whether we're pushing a lot of computation onto the browser or how we're delivering things, it's interesting that that quite a bit of the slowness of some of these pages is actually on the front end side to some degree, or how the pages actually get built up. So I do think it's important to try and track up from the end user's perspective. I think there's value in both, clearly. I don't want to minimize the back end Rails controller performance side, but you know, I think to some degree, when presented with the information of GitHub speed versus GitLab speed, it was really apparent that like the difference from the end user's perspective, and it's quite stark in many cases, like where GitHub is like twice as fast, and a lot of it seems to be related to the front end side right now.
So maybe like one way to approach that, like maybe we just start an issue. Maybe we just reach to each of the team and ask each of the team to write like the 3 or 4 QA scenarios for the most common workflows for their team. And we just start from there. Like we get some data. Maybe we understand how people build it, and we kind of build a practice of how to build these like user workflows next. Because like it's probably related to site speed, maybe it's related to some workflows that user go through. I actually also propose something. Maybe let's grab our workflow and let's focus on improving our usage of GitLab for GitLab development. We often complain about like GitLab underperforming on different pages. We just use that. So maybe we should record ourselves how we use that and kind of translate that into maybe execution of the site speed queries, like this, anything that's simplest that give us something to maybe not fix today. Maybe it's not the intent, but start tracking how this changes daily. How like we started tracking import export. It's actually quite interesting because like we saw I think like a regression, but then it started like being faster and things like that. So maybe like this is really like maybe the main intent. We should actively ask other teams, or maybe like record ourselves and have this consistent, like constant daily measurement of like different workflows and see a graph after like 1 month. Oh, there is like the regression. Should we actually look at that and fix that? I don't know, like anything. I'm kind of have like random thought. I use GitLab. I have each probably of us has like very unique usage of GitLab, different controls. Maybe there's some way to record that, what we do. Maybe it's just like site speed on the one page, like issue on or very large merge request or like a div, and see like how it changes over time, really. is it actually like getting gradually slower as we are adding, or is kind of becoming stable? Is kind of stable, and then if we start fixing these individual aspects, maybe we're gonna see how they're gonna affect these pre-recorded plans. Because like one of the interesting aspects of the QA testing is like you can execute some complicated workflow of actions being executed. So maybe we could use that. Maybe like if I'm maintainer, I'm kind of like going through commands and like each of these operations takes 200 milliseconds, it actually kind of significantly slows me down. So maybe I should just go and fix endpoint that is slow to me, or like the workflow that is slow to me. Hopefully, like making everyone else be more happy.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead. I'll stop talking.
No, on you go.
No, go ahead.
I mean, what I was going to say is that I think Camille's suggest is quite logical. Is what essentially that we're looking to do in quality, and maybe we should own that. Because in quality we have this kind of, well, so we have the more general overview of the product, like we do with the K6 testing. So what I'm proposing is essentially the same as site speed, that we have daily tests against the reference environments that we have already in place. And these tests are in a controlled test environment, so that we know that if there's a performance issue that's showing in them, we've already taken away pretty much all the wildcards that we could think of, and we know then that's literally it's the application that's not performing. And what we're proposing there is that we will be building up that over time and adding more pages and then scenarios as well in that site speed pipeline. So we're on the same page there. Quality, we wanted the same. We were always looking to do this, but we wanted to focus on server first, which now it's in a good spot. We want to move back into browser and cover that, the last gap there. So then we can see the server's performing well, but the page is performing badly, or vice versa, or a mix of the two.
Yeah, we're running out of time, but I think I do think it's interesting to run on GitHub.com, because at least for me, it's a key focus for us this year, trying to make sure GitHub.com is a platform people will enjoy using. But B, I think it's interesting because in my testing, I get very sporadic performance on GitHub.com. Sometimes it's fine, other times it's extremely slow. And I think having that information is interesting, and you can try and figure out like what's happening during some of these cases. Like why is our performance swinging so wildly on GitLab.com?
Yeah, I mean it's you're hitting the kind of the performance, the trouble with performance testing as a whole there on the head. .com can vary quite widely, and it's probably because of various issues behind the scenes with to do with infrastructure, what's going on, and what other people are doing. So what we want to look at quality is that we want to kind of build up from the bottom. So we test it in a controlled environment, and then we can see, okay, that page is just performing badly, regardless. That's an actual performance product issue. We need to get it fixed. But then you see reports of it, if you look at the telemetry data and say, actually, this page performed badly in .com, but on our test, it's fine. Then that would be a .com issue, and then that should be passed into either the infrastructure team or the right place for that to be investigated to say, well, this works fine on local installs. Why is it performing badly in .com? Look at the differences, that kind of stuff. So it's kind of a investigation game there. So that's why I've kind of proposed both. With we do site speed in controlled environments. We measure how the actual product performs in a bubble. And then we can also then look at the telemetry data and say, well, actually the data from real life is this, we've got this, and we can always then use that data to make informed decisions.
Cool. Okay, I think we're out of time.
Yeah.
Let's keep chatting on the issue. I think we have a lot of great ideas, and so if we don't align on something in the next couple of days, we can have maybe an async meeting set up to discuss further, dedicated to this. But I think that I really enjoyed the conversation. So thanks everyone, and let's keep it going on the issue and see how far we get, and we can have another meeting if we need to from here.
That's good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.